They worked
What's
together.
uh what's one of your favorite memories of both of your parents?
Hmm, that's a good question.
What puts a smile on your face today when you think back?
I just miss them. I wish they were here to take part of this. They were fighters. They were fighters. They were did all this by themselves. They didn't get grants or anything. They worked hard. Um, I just know that they they would. There's a picture. My dad's favorite picture was a picture. I think it's in one of the program books I sent you of this big, huge room and a big vat of paint. My mom in a painter's hat painting. They put every seat into an empty theater, every single seat themselves with help of their friends. They worked hard. It wasn't, they were hardworking people with a work ethic.
And they're very much worth remembering, and they're very much worth knowing about. Happy Father's Day, everybody. We hope you're having a wonderful weekend, and we hope you have someone in your life, a male figure that's worth celebrating. Perhaps you are that person who is deserving of being celebrated. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the father figures, the paternal spirit as it is demonstrated in entertainment. And we hope to go deep, deep, deep as we also dive into those cues from you, the questions sent in from our members covering all of entertainment, and we are here to answer them.
Happy Father's Day, Pro. I am super excited about the topic for this week's episode. I really look forward to exploring the place of fathers in storytelling.
Well, Eric, it's a wonderful thing to have you. I'm so happy to have you on the channel to discuss this topic. I have a feeling that many of our audience members out there, many of our viewers, are just like us, hungry to see good role models, good heroes, good masculine figures, and that's not to deny or to cast aside the importance of good female role models and feminine figures, but it's just to say that we're in a moment of time where entertainment has largely sort of dismissed the proper masculine form in entertainment. And so we want to take a moment to think about that and think about some of those great heroes who really inspire us to be better and possibly consider why they are so important. Now, folks, as we get into this topic, if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and you can stick it to the algorithms when you click it. We're talking about that notification bell.
And Pro, I'm completely with you. I don't think you have to make the male characters weaker or foolish in order to strengthen the roles of the female or the child characters. I think you can do both really well, and I think there's several movies that kind of point that out and challenge everybody just to be better people.
So, Eric, let's dive straight into that. Tell me some of your favorite movies and the ones that feature perhaps the best paternal spirit, right? And so let me define that before we go into there. For those of you out there who may not be aware of what the paternal spirit is that we're referring to, we're talking about the idea of a pattern of being out of fathers. That's the paternal mode, of course. We're talking about the proper way of acting out your life in the best way possible as a father or a fatherly figure. So, Eric, what are some of your favorite movies that do that?
So there are a couple that really stand out from when I was growing up. I think about the Swiss Family Robinson. What a great adventure movie where the father is the one that is still leading the family, sacrificing for the family, showing the sons how to be strong men. And you watch that as a child and you say, you know what, if I was ever shipwrecked, I'd want to be like that. Or I think about The Patriot with Mel Gibson. And again, you have a guy that is just taking care of his family until his family is threatened. And then again, he puts on the armor again, picks up the musket again, and teaches his sons how to be strong and empowers them to go out and start their own families. And there's just a lot of really good stuff in those kinds of movies that challenge us to be better men.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a moment. I want to stick with it. What do you think are some of the major attributes that define the proper masculine form and we're talking about the way that we act out our masculinity in the world. And then conversely, what are some of the negative attributes? How can it go awry?
So I think that a strong man is a man who has power under control. Somebody who can be dangerous if he has to be, but that's not how he lives his life. It's somebody that chooses to contribute to society, somebody who has embraced the role of protecting and providing for his family. I don't think those are themes that anybody should pull away from. I think that is a healthy way to approach life that not only contributes to the good of others, but also brings great satisfaction to the individual.
So let's jump into that. What you're saying then, if I understand correctly, is that avoiding conflict or avoiding difficult situations because you are weak and unable to affect proper change would not therefore be a proper masculine virtue, but instead the virtue lies in the fact that if you are powerful enough to make an impact, and then you keep that power in check so that it is properly manifested into the world, then that is the virtuous thing to be. So in other words, being weak is not good. Being strong and holding that strength into its proper and best effectuation is what we want to seek out in proper masculine role models. Is that fair enough?
Insecure people just fall apart when the pressure comes onto them. And the way you learn to be a strong person is by confronting the hard things in life, confronting the things that make you fearful, and pushing through until you have some kind of victory or resolution. That's what teaches a person to be strong. And I think that the role of fathers, particularly, is to teach their children how to do that, how to deal with the hard stuff of life in a positive, productive way.
It's a good point. It's not running away from the difficulties of life, because one of the first things we deal with as people when we come into this world is we deal with pain. It's unavoidable. It's woven into the fabric of our being, and it seems like we've entered into a world where empathy has risen to such a level that we want to pretend that pain is not a necessary part of the experience, but it is. And you're suggesting then that good men, good masculine role models and heroes in our world teach us how to deal with that pain and how to rise above it.
So it's interesting to see how the movies portray that. There's some movies that do this very well, and you see the sons reflecting back on their fathers, even if the father has been dead or distant from them for years. They reflect back on the lessons learned from the fathers. But then you see the contrast where the fathers are made foolish, where the fathers are absent, and it creates all kinds of angst and crisis in the life of the child that doesn't have to be there if fathers do their job.
One of the things we've been watching throughout the past months is the Walt Disney Company really struggling to find audiences, struggling to fill their parks. Universal and other studios and other companies are really taking advantage of that. One of the big movies that came out earlier this year was the Super Mario Brothers movie. And in that film, Mario has a brotherly love for Luigi and is willing to sacrifice and potentially even sacrifice his life to save his little brother. Now, I know it's Father's Day, it's not Brother's Day, but I think it's the same sort of spirit, that desire to look over, sacrifice, and care for that really rises up and connects with audiences. I think also about where Disney may have gone astray. When we look at this Strange World movie that came out last year that sort of upset the apple cart in terms of the proper masculine form, in terms of being, of course, not physicality. And then looking at Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, where people want their heroes to not lose sight of the self-sacrifice and not become curmudgeony sad sacks of characters. I think that Disney has really damaged that. And I remember back when Disney was strong in this area. You know, I think about movies like The Lion King, where Mufasa is very strongly represented as someone who imparts wisdom across the generations, just like you're describing, and will give up his life to protect his son. And who can possibly forget the scene where Mufasa dies? Spoiler alert, folks, for that 90s movie, but where Mufasa dies saving his son.
Yeah.
And that connects with people to the point that it brings people to tears even today, and it's a little cartoon. There's also, though, Eric, Disney has not completely lost their way. At least they didn't used to. So just in the last few years, They did well, I think, with Guardians of the Galaxy, specifically with the character Yondu.
Sure.
And I'd like to go there for a moment. Yondu is not a traditional father. He's sort of the anti-hero father, right? He begrudgingly accepts the role of being the father, and he's tough, and he doesn't demonstrate affection easily. And yet, there was something well done in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, especially the first two, where it's shown that Yondu had accepted the role of taking care of and sacrificing to the best of his ability to take care of Chris Pratt's character, Star-Lord. Can you talk to us about what it means to take on the role of fatherhood when it's not necessarily just a biological necessity, when you're not the biological father, but you take on the role of the father? And I guess what I'm curious about is when we are given a child biologically, then it is something that is already given to us. But when you take on the role of being a father, whether it is playing the paternal role with a child at the Boys and Girls Club, or whether it is being an excellent big brother to your brother who you don't have to do that for, or adopting a child, or whatever it might be, there's something deeply impactful when you choose someone to love and sacrifice for.
Well, and that word choose is really important. So background, I adopted all three of my children. And I remember at the first adoption, the social worker went through all the paperwork. We signed everything we needed to sign. Then she paused and looked us in the eye and asked the question, do you promise to always love this child and never abandon her? And that was a holy moment for me and my wife, because we recognized in that moment that this was more than bringing a child into our home for our sake, but this was a choice. This was a commitment for the rest of our life to seek what was best for that child and the children that we've adopted since then. And I think we see that in Yondu. Guardians of the Galaxy 2 starts to give some of the backstory there, and we find out that Yondu had been kidnapping children, bringing them to I'm forgetting the father figure's name, and he found out that these children were being killed, and he decided that he wasn't going to do that with the Peter character,
right,
with
Peter
the Star-Lord
Quill
character, but instead he chose to raise that child and not abandon him. Now, he may not have been a great father figure in terms of providing a nurturing environment, but you see where he taught Peter how to survive in that culture, in that raver kind of community, and prepared his adopted son for life in that hard environment. And if you measure it that way, he didn't give up, and he laid the foundation upon which his son would be able to succeed.
I think there's something too there with Yondu it's an important piece of why people are connected with that character. And that is that he's not perfect, as you identified. He does not know how to be a good father, and you really can't fault him. You look at the environment he's in, there's no way he has any idea how to be a good father. It's implicitly in the film that he probably didn't have a good father either. Can you talk a minute about the idea of having imperfect characters who try to rise up to be the best avatar of the paternal spirit, to manifest that as best they can, even imperfectly? And perhaps, now this is my own guess here, but I think that we need imperfect characters because it reflects who we are. We're imperfect. And when there is a perfect character, right, when you have Leave It to Beaver, it's hard to connect with that dad because that dad is just always so perfect that it's difficult to say, yeah, I can see myself in him. But when you have a character like Yondu, perhaps people look and go, you know what? And I'm sure this happens unconsciously. We don't sit in the movie theater and speak this out loud, but perhaps it connects with us because we see that, you know, I'm flawed as well. I'm not perfect. I'm not going to be a perfect dad. I'm not going to be a perfect uncle. I'm not going to be a perfect grandfather. But here's the best I can give you. And maybe
right.
That's what Yondu's doing.
And that's the power of good storytelling, is that we take people that have their flaws, but they choose to show up. They choose to sacrifice. They choose to do the right thing at the right time. And that's what makes them heroic. And here we are as flawed people who are tempted to give up, We're flawed people who are tempted to pull back from our responsibilities. And we see these characters and we say, you know what? Being a dad, being an uncle, being a mentor to a child is worth sacrificing for. And I'm going to step in and I'm going to continue to walk this out because these children are deserving of that kind of nurture that I'm able to give.
This thought just popped in my head. We have seen a battle of the sexes when it comes to entertainment. And it reminds me a little bit of the playground battles. You know, boys are better than girls, girls are better than boys. And for whatever stupid reason, we have played this out at the societal level, at the highest levels of influential people still having that playground battle rather than saying that men and women both have their places and both have their positives and there's negatives as well that we must avoid. But I was listening to you talk about the sacrificial nature of proper masculinity. All we hear about is toxic masculinity, but I want to talk about the best in masculinity because there is that. You were talking about the sacrificial aspect of this. And that's key to me because I was thinking about how bringing a child into the world, childbirth by necessity is sacrificial, right? And that's part of the entire process that every woman who becomes a mother goes through is the sacrifice of childbirth. Now, I know it's different for each and every woman, but it's woven into that entire the generation of new life. But it's not woven into the life of the man because a man has to choose to sacrifice, and he gets to choose the level at which he sacrifices. For women, it's biological, but for men, that sacrifice comes later, and it is part of the determination of the man. Can you talk to me about why you think that sacrifice is an important key component of proper masculinity?
So I think it comes down to character development. The natural state for anybody is to be self-centered, but a self-centered life is very relationally small. It doesn't demand that we develop our character at all. But when we enter into a committed relationship, especially when we bring children into the relationship, whether through birth or through adoption or through mentoring or whatever other way that you want to do it, all of a sudden you're challenged to go from being a self-centered person to being an others-centered person. And that's where real character development comes in, but it's also where real satisfaction comes in. A self-centered person eventually burns out. There's nothing praiseworthy about living my life just for myself. But when we become others-centered, that's where we experience true love. That's where we have the joy of watching other people grow up and become like us. And that sense of one generation handing off to the next generation is one of the greatest pieces of satisfaction that a person will ever experience.
In the movie Top Gun Maverick, we see the paternal spirit in Tom Cruise's character Maverick as he watches over his fallen friend's son. And he attempts to navigate the responsibility that he has to care for this young man and at the same time allow the young man to take the necessary risks to rise into his own place.
Yes.
Walk us through that process of how fathers can let go of their sons and daughters in the right way.
So the temptation is to try to protect our children from harm, but that leaves them weak. And you don't want a weak child. You want a child that can be as strong as you are. And so what we see with the Maverick character is that he is wrestling with this issue of do I protect this child that's important to me, or do I empower this child and give him a chance to be the heroic person that he longs to be? And so in the movie, they make the right decision, and that adult child steps up and he becomes the hero, and you see that passing of the torch, so to speak.
It's a great point. Eric, I want to show you a website real quick, and this is a report that we've got out. I think it really points to the damage that Disney has done to itself by getting away from demonstrating proper masculinity. And, you know, it's been movie after movie after movie that they seem to really be struggling with that. This is out of Florida's Voice by Eric Doherty. Universal Park ahead of 3 Disney World parks post-pandemic report finds. And what this goes on to talk about is how the Magic Kingdom is the last park at the Walt Disney World Resort, which remains above the Universal Studios parks. And it seems to me, I was posting on Twitter yesterday pictures of the Magic Kingdom and how it's no longer crowded and the guests are gone, the wait times are down, and we're seeing the same thing in the box office. I feel like families are actually, perhaps even intentionally now, avoiding the Disney content. And I really do believe that even to the parks, which this is crazy to me, but even to the parks, that this comes back to perhaps a cultural recognition finally, and maybe it took 2 or 3 decades to get here, but finally a cultural recognition of the importance of the father, or at least the importance of the male hero in some way, whether it's in your own family or your community, or whether it's in fiction. And so I'd like to wrap up this segment before we go to the cues from you. And I'm curious from your point of view, how important are men? Because men are often told that they're not important, or that they can be dispensed of out of the home, or that they're not necessary in the raising of children. Men are often treated in such a way that they feel completely dismissed. How important are men, and how can they rise to be the best versions of themselves this Father's Day?
Well, statistically, I mean, the research is out there that when a father's in the home, the children are much healthier, they're much more successful, they're much more emotionally grounded, less likely to commit suicide or do risky behaviors. When there isn't a father in the home, the likelihood of the family falling into poverty skyrockets, the likelihood of a child falling out of school or going to jail skyrockets. There are all kinds of benefits that come from having a father in the home. So that's the research. But practically speaking, men and women are different, but they're complementary. And if you take the complementary part of that relationship and put it to the side, you can't help but struggle in terms of raising children and providing the safe, the security that a child needs. And my challenge to men is that whether you feel like it or not, step up. Step up for the sake of the children that you help create, but also step up for your own sake. Because again, if we just choose to be a self-centered person, if we allow ourselves to be pushed to the side, we never become the person that we were created to be, and we lay a shaky foundation, or we never contribute to the foundation that helps our children to be great.
And I just want to also give this clarification. Of course, we're talking about statistics there. Folks, if you're in a home where there is no father, or if you're a mom, a single mom out there listening to this channel, and you're trying to raise kids and you're worried very much about your children, we just want to say that, statistics are what they are. We're not here to diminish the importance of the father, but we also want to say, too, that there are some really special moms and some people out there who can fill in the gaps when a dad is not available for whatever reason. And so we just encourage people who are in more difficult situations to continue to strive forward and make their families as best as they possibly can be. There are some real heroes out there out of both of the sexes. All right, Eric, any final thoughts on that before we go to the cues from you?
No, just men, if you're watching this, do your job, because your job matters. The children that you influence are better off because of you. And when you feel underappreciated, when you find out that it's hard, just roll up your sleeves and get at it, because your children will be better and you'll be better for showing up and choosing to serve.
And there's the temptation to live your life in such a way as to say that it has no meaning, and I'm just going to spend my time playing video games or finding the ways that I can avoid stress the most. I'm going to watch football as much as I possibly can. I'll do my 9 to 5, and then I'm just checking out the rest of the time. But if you do that, and you can do that, that's an option. But you're not going to find the meaning that really brings you joy at the end of the day. Not happiness, but joy. All right, Eric, let's go to the cues from you. Of course, this is where our members of the channel are able to submit questions specifically to us to answer for you. And Eric, if you would do me the honor, would you mind to read these questions from the
All
members?
right, Pro. The first one is from user, and I'm never going to be able to get all the letters out there. Do you think Comcast would accept a deal involving Star Wars to lower the price tag on Hulu in January?
Well, that would be a very complicated deal. That's extremely creative, and I love the question. The issue here is that Hulu is already going to be a complicated deal indeed, as Disney tries to find ways to make this happen, given that the amount of cash necessary is so high, and we don't believe that Disney has that amount of cash right now. So they're going to have to get creative, but adding Star Wars to that would likely overcomplicate the issue. There are easier franchises and easier IPs to sever in order to sweeten the deal and make Comcast a happy partner in this. So could you see Star Wars? Sure. Is it likely? No, not in comparison to some of the other entities out there. You're far more likely to see Disney perhaps give Comcast ABC, for example, although that would be interesting to see with them having NBC as well. But there are definitely easier properties that they could move over. And, ESPN is far more valuable than Star Wars, and yet it would even be easier to move over simply because of the way that Disney has managed the contracts associated with Star Wars. But that is an awesome question. All right. Eric, next question we've got.
All right, at Reply By. What's your take on Disney selling certain properties to Apple to get funds for Hulu? Avoid antitrust issues, strengthen Apple, Disney ties, and most of all, save Iger's legacy. I don't believe anything is off the table when it comes to what Iger would do to protect himself.
Well, Reply By, one of the most humorous things I can imagine, and I don't think this will happen necessarily, but one of the most humorous things I could imagine is for Disney to sell Pixar to Apple. Now, would that not be a complete turnaround and a comeuppance for John Lasseter, who is now over at Apple? I would love to see it. I don't know what Disney would sell to Apple, but I think at this point, perhaps Disney is looking for ways to make money, and that would be a creative way to do so. If they sell Pixar to Apple, and if Lasseter takes control of Pixar, I've got 6 months of fun content to cover, and I can't wait. Great question.
All right, this one is from Discrapto. I'm wondering if the film and TV industry will feel afraid or unrest of the video game industry soon. We had 2 of the best game adaptations into film, and thank you, Mario and Last of Us, just this year. Soon Final Fantasy will release its next big installment that's inspired by Goatee. Up to
Game of Thrones. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, so Discrapto, here's the answer to your question. No, I think that Hollywood in general is exceedingly happy to see the video game market rise because those are largely uninterrupted, undamaged, pristine properties that Hollywood has yet to damage with their crazy new ideas and indoctrinations and ideologies. So no, I think they love the fact that Sonic the Hedgehog is popular. They love the fact that Mario is grand. They can't wait for Zelda and Final Fantasy to rise onto the theaters. This is an opportunity for Hollywood after they have damaged their own brands. Now, will they learn and fix this as they go forward? No. However, when there are companies like Nintendo shepherding their own IPs, then there is some hope to be had. In fact, I think there's quite a bit of hope. Hopefully, Sega will do the same with their properties. Beyond that, I'm not sure the video game companies will do well in protecting the properties that they have. Hopefully, Hollywood will learn its lesson, but hope springs eternal there, eh?
All right, this one is from Olaf Van S. I wonder, will Disney make any money this and next year on any of their assimilated IPs, with all delays due to the strike? Doesn't Lucasfilm learn from past mistakes by releasing 2 movies this close to each other, especially if one is received badly?
The Last Jedi and Solo in parentheses.
Yes. And will people still go and watch 4 or 5 parts of an IP where the 5th is released more than 20 years, I'm guessing?
More than 20 years later. Well, Olaf Van S., the answer to this is I don't believe that Star Wars is going to release 2 movies in the same year. I think those are probably placeholders meant to hold on to theatrical release windows, and that They plugged in Star Wars there, but they'll move these in the future. There are some very interesting theatrical reservations from Disney that surely will not hold. One of those we talked about in a video yesterday morning, discussing Sonic the Hedgehog 3 going up against a Marvel movie, Thunderbolts. I'm not sure that holds, because going head-to-head on the same day for Disney would put them in a position where a little blue Sega mascot that was most popular in the 90s could beat their MCU film. So, no, I don't think that Disney is going to do that at all in regard to the Star Wars films. I don't believe in franchise fatigue. I think that we are headed for major changes with the company, leadership shakeups, and we'll see how that plays out. And then we'll find out how popular or unpopular these franchises truly are.
All right, this one's from Man of WDW. I want to hear your opinion on this new Star Wars Outlaw game. I'm normally a big fan of Ubisoft's open world games like Assassin's Creed. This looks like a knockoff girl boss version of Han Solo.
Well, unfortunately, that is how many people are seeing this. When you open your marketing with the term oppression, it tends to signal that there are going to be some issues behind it. One thing that perhaps could give us some optimism is the budget behind these games. We know it is extremely expensive to make them, and you would hope that the producer behind it would find it within themselves to say, are we really willing to go down this path and lose this kind of money by going into woke territory? That's the only optimism I have. We'll see. We're still too far out to know exactly, but I would say that first impressions are really important, and in this case, it did quite poorly with those first impressions.
All right, this is from Stephen Oldham 886. How does a company like Disney weigh the risks and benefits of marking down or selling assets? Either has risks of reducing the overall value of the company, including stockholder confidence. So I can imagine this is a very fine tightrope to traverse.
So that is a fantastic question. And Stephen, you asked this at the worst time possible because I can no longer answer it. Had you asked this 2 weeks ago, this would be rather easy because we could look at the pattern that Disney has demonstrated over the last 10 years. However, with CFO Christine McCarthy stepping down and a new individual coming up to take her place as a transitory role where they will only be there for about a year, well, that means that the pattern is broken. We don't know what this new CFO, who has nothing to lose and no Hollywood connections, what he will do. And we don't know how the assets will be marked down. All of this makes it for a very exciting period of trying to figure out where Disney will go financially. We're going to have to wait and see what this new CFO does. And then even after that, the next new CFO, what they'll do. So hang tight, Stephen. Great question. You're right on the money. But we got to wait to see what happens with the money with new people in place.
All right, from Space Dave 2000. How do you verify your sources? And have you ever had a source that ended up lying to you? If you do, how do you address these types of people?
Space Dave, great question. Every source is different. There are some general ways that we can identify sources. Sometimes that means that we go into an unrecorded session on video to be able to meet the person, and then they may give us in an unrecorded off-the-record session ways by which to validate their identities. Another way that it happens sometimes is that someone will reach out to us with information that would only be able to be known by an individual of their position, and then they will give us their identity, and we can reach out to them privately and they respond. And then finally, there's also the way in which we'll get information from a source that really is very nervous and perhaps even remains anonymous to us. And in those cases, we have to wait. We can't bring you what they're saying right away. What we have to do is hold on for days, weeks, even months to make sure that the information they are sending us is correct. And also that they are not sending us information that they wish to use in order to manipulate the audience or manipulate the press. And if they're correct over a long period of time, and if they know things that would be impossible for the general public to know, then after a while, it becomes much more easy for us to include those individuals as sources. As for have sources ever lied to us or to me, yes, that has happened in the past. Although I would say that it is limited. So we have had some situations where We've had some situations where a source went farther than I think reality bore out, and perhaps they did not have the information they thought they did. And then there was one individual who gave us some good stuff, and then at the same time, there was other stuff that was very untrue, and so we had to reconsider what we would produce from that source. Now, neither of those are people that you would know or anybody in the YouTube community would know. These are individuals who are in sort of niche industries within theme parks. But yes, we have had that happen. We're very careful with our sources, though, and we're extremely careful with protecting their anonymity when they ask for it. All right, next up.
All right, Vicarious has a sense of humor. What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen, wrong script? So what type of assets or IP is even possible for Disney to release to gain capital? Are they limited to trying to license out similar to give each rights for Star Wars games, or is there a method beyond borrowing or selling studios that are actually feasible to generate the revenue?
Capital needed. We'll assume there. Vixeris, so the answer to that is that let's eliminate what Disney cannot sell. It's very, very difficult to sell Star Wars. It's nearly impossible to sell Marvel. They can't really sell many of their animated movies. That would be weird and hard. They also cannot sell, for the most part, their parks. That would be tough. The one they could sell Disneyland and Walt Disney World surprisingly easier than any of the other parks. The international parks, for reasons we won't get into here, lest we make the video too long, they're very difficult to sell. And sometimes Disney doesn't even own them. Now, what they could sell is they could sell networks. They can sell channels. They can sell properties that are not highly intertwined with the company at large. They could sell original IPs that maybe they haven't touched in a while. For example, they can sell the rights to John Carter. They can sell the rights to Zorro. They can sell the rights to any of these other characters that they're sort of tangentially capable of producing for but choose not to. And there are plenty of properties out there that Disney has access to, that they own, that they don't use. Perhaps those are some that they might go to, but I think we're looking at perhaps Disney wanting to sell something big. And in that case, maybe ESPN, although I doubt it, maybe ABC, although that's perhaps unlikely as well. But there are other big parts of the company that could be sold. And I think that's worthy of a video in the future where we'll take a look at that. And finally, Eric from Slade Wilson, what do we have?
Why is Jonas such a prude?
Poor Jonas. It is Jonas's job to be a prude. He is the producer. Get it? Jonas is there to help us keep on the line and to not stray. He's there to help us. We all try, all of us, myself, Valiant Renegade, Lauren Connor, and everybody else who's associated with the channel. We try very hard to be moral and ethical and upstanding. And Jonas is there to be the barometer when we stray from that, even when we're not aware. So good on Jonas. And by the way, if you're ever curious about why we try to avoid profanity on the channel, well, that would make it very difficult for families to listen to it in the car, or for parents to play the channel while they're cooking in front of their children. All of those sorts of situations. So why limit the audience? Why do anything that would cut down on that? And we're quite pleased with how things are going so far. We think you are too. And we are so pleased for all your support. All right, Eric, final thoughts about this Father's Day. And, well, first of all, let me say to you, or lastly, I guess, now that we're at the end of the video, Happy Father's Day to you.
Thank you, Pro. I hope you enjoy your Father's Day as well.
I'm looking forward to it. And to everybody out there, we hope you have a wonderful Father's Day. Sometimes these holidays are tough. I know some people who have just lost their fathers. And if you're in that kind of a situation where you've lost someone that you love dearly and this is going to be a tough day, I wish you extremely well and happy memories. Well, folks, if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and you can stick it to the algorithms when you click it. We're talking about the notification bell. Drop a comment down below. And wherever you are, whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.
Make sure to catch The Pro Show Thursdays 5 to 7 Eastern Time. Entertainment Explained, The Culture Curve Conquered, live with Pro and all his friends.